I first started the show this morning, I was talking about, as you get older, you sort of the edges get knocked off you. Things that you believe to be true tend to take on shades of grey and things like that. And that there are very few issues at which are black and white. But this one for me is. And I introduced it, I think, yesterday. I talked about it 6 weeks ago initially. And now Michael Mora, who used to work, I think, for TV3 News and now works as an investigative journalist for New Zealand Herald, has done a bit more work on a story that broke, it would have been about 6 weeks ago, because that's when I remember talking about it. And it was of the secret establishment, and the key word there is secret establishment, of a radioactive waste facility near Palmerston North, in actual fact in the Manawatū. And it has been located there. It was signed off by then Labour Minister of Defence Peeni Henare. Yeah, the guy up did the haka, that one. Yep. And then a new, in concert with the New Zealand Defence Force and, as I understand, a variety of other Crown institutions and departments, they transferred, or are seeking to transfer, if they haven't already, waste which is leaking, believe it or not, radioactive waste which has come from a number of small, radioactive reactors that are mostly used for medical purposes in New Zealand. We have quite a few of them in actual fact, but of course the waste comes out of them. And they're seeking to transfer those and store them in the future in a field in the Manawatū. Now, the extraordinary thing about that was that it was conducted in such secrecy, such incredible secrecy, that nobody knew about it. Well, not quite true, as we'll find out in a second, until it was there and built and purposed. So those who might have had some misgivings, and this is a classic NIMBY, can I say, and I wouldn't blame anybody who was in a NIMBY position on this one, after the radioactive waste at the Christchurch facility started to crap out, literally, they then decided that to build a new one, and now all radioactive waste in New Zealand is going to go to this Manawatū facility in the middle of, well, it's not in the middle of nowhere, it's in the middle of farmland, actually. And joining us to talk about it, because she's got an extraordinary story on this, is a mayor that I very much admire, the mayor from the Manawatū District Council, Helen Worboys, and she joins us now. Helen, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the show again.
Thanks, Michael.
Listen, Hugh, my editorial producer, contacted you to talk to you today about this, and you told him the most extraordinary story about this secret radioactive waste facility. Can you repeat it now for all of us, please?
Yeah, the little bit that I knew about it, of course, under the Ministry of Health, under National Security, but the first I became aware of it was back during COVID when I had a phone call from Ashley Bloomfield out of the blue, who just said, he said that currently, my understanding is it's X-ray film, it was being stored in a old building in Christchurch that now needed to be demolished thanks to the earthquake. So they had to find an alternative place to store the contents. And he said they were looking for a remote site to store this material, and they were ideally looking for land already owned by the government. And there was a piece of land in Manawatū, in our patch, that the Defence have their communication site on that they were looking at. And I was a bit staggered by that. And I said to him, hang on a minute, I live not far away from there, and it is hardly a remote area, and I really ask you to reconsider this. And I stressed to him that, it's not remote. If you want remote, what's wrong with the back of Waiouru Army Camp or whatever? And so the last I knew of it, I said to him, I just urge you, please, to rethink the location, because this is not remote. and the piece of land you're talking about is used for communication for Ohakea, who's based in our patch. And that's all I heard about it until the consent was actually approved. Wasn't even aware that the consent had come in. When I followed it up with our team, under national security rules, there was a confidentiality to our consenting team, so much so that even the governance team, including myself, weren't even aware that it had gone through. So that's about the limit of what I know. And people who have spoken to us about us being critical that it wasn't publicly notified, we've shared that information and said you need to go and talk to the Ministry of Health because it all came under national security.
How extraordinary. Now, as I understand, therefore, you're saying to me that your consents team, and this isn't bizarre, isn't it? The Ministry of Health then go to your council, the Manawatū District Council, they go to your consent staff and they say, we're going to put in a consent, it's secret. It's so secret you can't tell the mayor and any of the councillors. Is that right?
Well, no, it's not quite that like that. It is normal for us. We don't know what consents come in at any time.
Yeah, but you'd normally get a
to.
heads up, surely, on something it was politically sensitive from your consents and team, wouldn't you?
No.
Really?
No. Well, unless we haven't had anything at that sensitivity level. But no, it's an operational matter. So it sits with our chief executive and the operational team. So, and my understanding is that the consent conditions did not trigger public consultation, but the fact that the consent came from a central government department, it came under national security. So our team were not able to speak about it at all. And my understanding is that's par for the course for any central government consenting process.
If my chief executive had not told me as mayor that this was coming before me, he would be in serious bother, Helen. Obviously, you have a more sanguine relationship with your chief executive, yeah?
I have an excellent relationship with our chief exec. I shared with him the conversation that I had with Ashley Bloomfield way back several years before, and it wasn't till it got raised again when I mentioned to him about it to find out that the consent actually had gone through, and it was all to do with that national security. So, I made the point on behalf of our community right at the start when they were supposedly thinking about where this was going to go, that if you want remote, you need to rethink this. And we didn't.
Well, here's the question for you then. You're absolutely right. That would be you've done your good mayor job there. You've said, right, this is what the perspective is, and you've said, no, I don't want this here. At any stage, was there the opportunity when the processing of the consent for that viewpoint to be considered by your consent staff at Manawatū?
No, because my understanding, from what I understand, is that under the conditions of the consent, there was no requirement for public notification. The details around that are operational. I don't know or understand those. But the more important part was that it was a national security matter. And anybody who's asked for information, we have referred them to the Ministry of Health. Okay.
Where it is now, it's built and operational now, is it? Is it currently going, so to speak?
Only anecdotally what I hear from the neighbours, that there is movement. There have been stuff loaded in and out of the bunker. It's a concrete bunker. So that's all I know. As far as confirmation that it is there, no, I don't have that.
Okay. So would you expect, given this is now hit headlines, as I said, I think the story first broke 6 weeks ago when people who were adjacent to the area started to go to the media and say, hey, have you received, what's community sentiment, I guess is the best word to describe it. What's been expressed to you as the representative of those communities as to the concern or otherwise?